Okay, so I actually wanted to talk about this because there's this whole Terrence Howard thing going on with him saying 1 times 1 equals 2. Okay, or at least I saw some comment saying that he said that. I have no idea if he did. So, what I'll say is that I've been thinking about that, not really for his stuff because I don't know what his stuff is, but actually my kind of math binarily that I've been thinking about for a long time that I need to do for how CPUs and GPUs and everything else display their stuff. So here's the real rub about why it is I don't like a lot of the types of math that we have. Okay, but generally speaking, it's quite good, right? So 0 is the first start of why I started having issues, and I get generally confused with math, and I have to fight that, and then I have to eventually just do it however the hell they say I'm supposed to. But the reason why is because 0 is a canceling out value, and world physics is destructive interference value. And it's how did it do that? You have to put energy in to do that, and you have to calculate that and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it doesn't really make sense. But it's if you ever think about it in an algebraic order of operations, it says, actually, once you do 0, this is now going to mean that you make a negative number, and then you add it to that, and then you cancel out whatever that first number is, right? Right, same thing with division, right? Or if it's a negative number, or however the hell, but it's supposed to 0 everything out. And then 1, do nothing at all. Literally do nothing. But that's how our brains immediately think. It's just 1 equals same thing. 0 didn't do anything. Oh wait, no, sorry, didn't. Actually, it meant that it for sure made it 0. 0 equals 0. Any 0 there, it means 0. Right? And it's this is the problem with binary. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is 5 actual numbers. I'm preferencing this with the whole CPU thing and programming because of that, along with why it is math works this way for me. Right? 0 should in no way do anything. It's a literal placeholder nothing value for a given area that is labeled to mean this in our minds as a general rule. 0 on any, 1, 0, 0, 0, 3 zeros, 1,000. There's 3 zeros there, that means there's nothing there, but that 1 there in this placeholder of the 1,000 value point area means, you guessed it, it's 1,000. You could literally have no actual symbols there, but nobody would really think about it that way, right? So, that's the problem, okay? 0 should do nothing, right? It should do absolutely nothing. It doesn't. It zeroes everything out. That makes no sense. My first thought, it should do literally nothing at all. Why does it do something? Right? So I just kind of had to put up with that, right? Because when you're young, you're no, it makes 0 equals 0. That's easy to fucking, and it's done, Except why does it do that? You get older and you end up going, that shouldn't even make sense. Why do we do that? Right? So then 1 does nothing at all. Except because we already just described 0 doing something, and it's an actual algebraic equation. 0 has become a symbol like psi that means go over here and do this. For all things, cancel it out, no matter what it is, to 0. How am I supposed to program that binarily? You know what I mean? So the very first stuff that they ever had for computers makes no sense at all. They had to literally make this whole other thing for how it is that it displays, and then it wasted a bunch of clock cycles for how it is that it went and reference this thing that equals the first thing they ever really did was try and cancel it out, because that's what it's saying. So it's the electricity going through, trying to destructively interfere it, make it so that way it displays this in that way, right? Except there's no real way to do that, so they had to make an actual another analog computer that would then send, because that triggered that point of how 0 is there for their program to destructively interfere as it goes through all of its transistor phases. That's the worst thing. It produces a lot of heat. It's no, don't do that. You know what I mean? What the fuck? I just wasted a whole bunch of shit. No, that's a bad idea, right? Well, they had it like that for a while. Because, who else has computers and who else has the time? And you know what I mean? So it stuck around for a little bit. Just a scotch. But it's like everybody that was doing the thing for the computation was like, this has got to go. This is bad. Don't do that. This is the dumbest thing. I'm a waste, like literally of all of this energy, all of this, like it's just dumb, right? And zero appears a lot more than you think. Like it would do that for any given zero that shows up in the binary at first. That sucks. That's like the worst. Like, fuck, I can't use this for anything like that kind of type of calculation. It's the dumbest thing, right? So it took a long time for us to figure out how to make numbers work with computers is what we're talking about, right? Even though mechanically, it was the equivalent of it didn't do anything. The switch or whatever didn't do anything, right? It is exactly how it's supposed to be, except it goes, all right, it didn't do anything, and then it didn't allow for it to get to the other end and do anything anymore. Oh, what do you know? That's super easy, right? But like, why does that computer over there not do the same as this computer over here? Meanwhile, this is like the size of like a pinball machine or whatever. Stupid thing, right? But it does mean that. Which means it doesn't change the zero, and so the zero pops out. Or stays there. That kind of thing. So, 1 does something in no way, right? That fucking actually kind of gets a bit annoying. Like, you can see it in my face. It's like, that gets pretty fucking annoying. As like, we already have an algebraic expression for this zero now that needs to happen. So like now we're going to immediately just get rid of all this. We have an order of operations for all this other shit for how zero is supposed to be done. Nope. Throw it out. Doesn't do anything. Why? Whatever. You didn't know that as a kid. You weren't ever going to care. Whoopie-doo. You know, you move on. 0 equals 0. 1 equals same. 2, which is how they actually did this for math for kids to learn. All right, this is the real kind of like, you want to know about how this really happened, but not really. But they knew and understood students, especially when they're kids or they don't know much about math, don't really grasp that part, right? So instead, it's like 2, I'll just add the same 2 numbers, and I get that. And it's like, yep, a table of multiplication, and we all go along with it, without really thinking about it much. But like the persons who initially made math, which, yeah, that's right, they had to write down symbols, all agree, they had to go like, this is what this means, and so on, and everybody followed suit. There were literally no rules to math. That's the point. They could just mean this for this person, and it does this for this person, and that's what that is. So we created a standardized process for all of us to start with, just like with verbal language, right? That's literally what math means. We had to create a standard data set value that we would express to others, and everybody would then group together like a big old cult echo chamber validation group and tribe, and then we'd all go like, yeah, this is what it means. And we spread it and proliferated it, right? That's literally the only reason why it does that. But it sounds good. We understand, two is 2 numbers, right? Except binarily, it makes no fucking sense whatsoever at all. We already, and this is separate to that, made an order of operations for 0. And then it's like, in the world of physics, this is how I would describe it, where it's like, all right, so we did this one thing, right? And it took energy to do that. To zero everything out, it takes energy, right? And 1, you don't do anything. It takes no energy to do that. Okay, all right. It takes energy to do this too. All right, well, for that too, I'm going to start using some of that energy I have to get back from that fucker to make everything zero out to make this thing do something. So it's like, all right, and then I'm going to, physics-wise, right? Like if you want to describe it, right? So it's like, all right, I'm going to use that to fucking get some of that back. And further proceeding up to like infinity, because 0 is a 0 as a placeholder nothing value, except it technically is an infinitesimally infinite thing, right? Which doesn't really make sense. But in the world of physics, it also doesn't really make sense, depending on who you ask. And then the more and deeper you go into that, it goes like, no, this is actually a 0 value. We just don't make it do anything, and then we skip over and we do this imaginary value, and the whole bunch of other algebraic shit that goes on with that. But I was like, all right, I don't know what Terrence Howard's going on about, but for a while my binary used to do the workaround that they all started with back in the day, which was 0 does actually nothing, and then we just have it display from that clock cycle as a 0 for, where it needs to be displayed. So it does nothing with that first initial, and it goes, yep, that didn't change, and then now actually go display this as a result. It makes it super fast and easy and efficient. Same thing with 1. It added a 1 to it binarily, and then it goes, because it's this basic sequence and strings of binary, that means, and this slight change over here changed for its binary. It now knows, display it like this. And super fast, easy, all day. And then 2 goes back to just adding the 2 numbers, right? Super simple. And then there's huff and puff. I don't like that. I don't like any of that. That's the stupidest thing ever. Fuck you. That's not how math works. You gotta change this. I'm like, That's the dumbest thing, right? So it's like, I didn't do that for the longest time. Like, who's gonna fucking stop me? It still displays it right every single time, right? Like, that's the easiest math, easiest simple binary data table I've ever heard in my life. It'll work every time for all architecture, all the time, no matter what. Doesn't matter how deep you go, doesn't matter any of that. It'll work. And that's how my brain sometimes works, right? But it's like, all right, so that doesn't really fully work, because like, if we wanted to get into math now, which is just actually, I made like this circle with an X through it as a symbol for this math that I do, where it's like, actually 0 does nothing, straight up, like it just doesn't do anything, and that's how math's really kind of supposed to work. And 1 just multiplies it by itself. So it's like, instead of it meaning it cancels that out and it stops the order of operations, no, it doesn't do any of that. It says, see that number initially on this side and this little X right here, or X with a circle, right? Then like this number now means do that number immediately for that, and then we'll add it. And that's the order of operations for our actual math that happens, right? So like, then it goes under and it adds it because it's multiplication, right? And it works with all the other symbols. So, but it's like 2 equals 3 of those numbers, right? Because you have 1 number and 2 number, then you have a 3rd number, which is over here, right? So, or if you were to look at it, this one, and then there's the equal, and that's the output. Works every fucking time, logically speaking, every time, because there's already an order of operations, and these are shorthand order operations that you get taught for a table, and you're made to memorize, but logically you can't actually make it work except for 2 plus equal, so that's, no, the same number plus twice. I mean, the same number 2 times, add together. What the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, immediately your mind just has like a little right, but I got there, and that's what it is. So like, the initial thought process of like how they think about it, in terms of like 2 equals the same thing twice, right? Like, really super fast, and we get it. Actually doesn't work very well later on. At first it does, and then we get slower at it for some damn reason. It's like, there's a reason why, because we ended up learning more, and then it goes like, that doesn't make sense. Like, our brains literally go like, check, error, wait a second, no, but that's what that is, and that's what everybody says it is, and so you just have to go along with it. And that's something you end up picking up as you go throughout life. That's always a thing. So it was like, well, my binary is just going to mean this, and this is super easy. I don't care about whatever their binary is. This is just all it's going to mean, and it'll work for every architecture, and it's super easy to always make work. Because that's, truthfully speaking, how it does. All of it, to begin with. All transistors, gates, that is, are basically a similar kind of process. It adds, it subtracts, it stops, or whatever. And depending on the cache and the value that's behind and attached to it, then ultimately allows for you to gain and perform a calculation. Which means cache value usually is what modulates electrical input, which this is going to now get into electrical engineering. So, if I have a diode here, and I put in this amount of volt and amp, and I get this watt, and I change this watt to this because it was pulsed like this as an initial because of this given capacitor, which is now your cache, it then means I drained it off that amount, right? Which now then can mean something else somewhere else, down the line of the transistor, for all of your different computers, CPU cores, or GPU cores for that matter. That's a type of gate that we actually do use, for what it's worth. So, as a result, it's like, behold, you know more or less more than most people do already about how transistors work and most of your computers work and calculate. So I was like, all right, depending on how I set up any of those caches for any of these given transistors, and I ultimately down the line set up the cache later for my programming, I can then ultimately alter any given value for any given transistor for any given CPU core or GPU core to output the right value and display it the correct way. It doesn't matter what the architecture is. That's how that works. So I was like, all right, well, if it's already going to do this, and all of my math will only work this way, and I'm already going to have it effectively alter itself because I'm going to change these values down into a, like, 4 binary, right? But, like, this is actually 2 binaries with 2, like, IP address binary types that head at first towards something, right? So, like, cache gets set up, and then it knocks itself down. Right, except cache doesn't always get set up. In fact, cache is always kind of modulating and changing all the time, which is a bit weird because, like, of course that means it knows a given information set, but that's also why pattern and sequencing of that 1 and 0 after also has IP address change for input of information both towards something but also back towards where it came from. That's a whole other thing. The reason why I'm talking about it is because, like, 690 times 420 doesn't work with this, right? So it's like, right, we have a 0 here, we have to, and then we have to, right? And we have to do 42 times 690, right? It's like, immediately you kind of get it, right? Except, no, my math won't work with that. So the binary goes, this 0 immediately needs to go get put out as this cache modulation at the end for where the pin that it is ultimately going to have at the end for that. Except that gets broken out as it goes from this stored cache as a bunch of series of patterns and sequences of 1s and 0s for the display. Now wait for it. Right? Right, that means it changed this value for the electrical signal that's going through as to basically be a 5 and an 8. Because that's how it'll work. It's now that's 8 times this 42. Now it's this 5 times this 42. And that's how that works, right? Basic stuff. Easy. So it gets out the right number, except as it goes through, and this is all in one clock cycle, because that's the cache that changes, as it changed initially from that, it then happens, it's like, you did not, no, you cannot change cache binary values. Yes, that's the program in the operating system. So, no, I can't do that. So, be quiet. Moving on. That value now changed, right? But as it goes through, because that value got sent over there, it knows that these things are coming. I need to now know what this, for my display for volts and amps, gets sent as the 1 and 0 for it, ultimately speaking, to display a 0 on your screen. That's right. Instead of the CPU, it does it on your GPU, because it's that much faster. It goes, set it up, knock them down the right way, and it now knows what to display binarily as it pulses and sequences it out to mean in this area, in this place, and you got a 0. In one clock cycle. Because that's all you need to do. You don't need to do it on the CPU. You don't need to have it go through all those tracers. You don't need to have it stored in your fucking stupid RAM or your cache. You don't need any of that. That makes no sense. That's the worst way to do this. It's the slowest, less precise, all the things ways possible. But you know what it did do also? It definitely made it impossible, quantumly speaking, to know in any aspect or way what the value would be until it gets to your display. That's right. Your display is the only thing that will actually know what the value is because it was never stored and it never calculated once what the value ever was. Which means now you have a quantum calculation. That's quasi. It's quasi-quantum. It's not a value. There is no value. It just knows to display this like this because, hey, guess what? It already has those data tables in the operating system. It knows this means this, and for these given possible changes, for this change to your screen and this GUI and everything else, it now displays that. That's all it needs to do. It'll do that for every single number in every single spot in all the right sequences. That's the operating system type that I've got. It does that more than just for numbers. It does it for every single translatable possible binary type. Because remember that whole we had it initially, cancel thing, and there's a lot of heat, or then we had this other thing, and it's like, right. So they eventually, over enough period of time, they're like, this little tiny little data, golden goose egg data table, which is hard, deep, fucking binary as to what things mean. So you have architecture like assembly, and then you have C or something, this gets to deep. This gets to this is actually what you're saying, right? And it means this for this architecture. This architecture goes this to this golden goose egg kind of thing. It still exists to whatever degree it does. And so it's this is what it means. Nobody fucking touches any of that. And it's you're not using our shit. It's yeah, I know, I don't care. I'm never going to use it. It's old. It's fucking too old. It doesn't work anymore. It's not necessary. You never need a program like that. All you need is the change at the screen. That's it. All you need is for those changes to be known how it ultimately calculates through. It never actually has in any way stored binarily the 0 or any of the other numbers or any of it. It never needs to. But also it does the same thing for every single click, every single keystroke, and every single thing that is your video game, that is your website, that is your internet traffic, and more. It never needs it to go to anything other than exactly where it needs to go and have it arrive sequenced and patterned correctly at the right spot for you to see the change on your screen. That's it. That's all it needs. So practically, it doesn't do anything except bifurcate most of the data off to a bunch of internet stuff, right? That then goes, send it like this for them to know their type of IP binary. And this screen changed like this, right? Every single type of area that it can change like this, it just needs to know that screen change for this input, for this thing, and all that, right? And it's okay, that's easy. That's easy as fuck to understand. Because only these changes are changing. Only these areas are changing. All of that means binarily, it's super fast, super simple for it to know all those different types of changes, right? Because it can store that as a changed value within inside of both the transistor, but also its cache, as a both charge and also outright delivery to the transistor as well. As a result, it means, as you get this, guy shot me behind the fucking car. Well, he didn't actually, and you won't even see that. I was right here at all points, and it updates you constantly. So it's no, this is changing like this, right? And it's right, except it goes, sequence this bullshit. This is how many update ticks you've got. So actually, instead of sending this many times this stupid poll, blah, blah, it goes, this chunk. And then you end up going why is my frame rate like shit? I'm well, because that's the server tick rate, you dummy. That's the only thing you see. No, but it doesn't look smooth. I don't care if it looks smooth. That's their server tick rate. That's how shit that is. You should get them to update that. I'm not going to give you any updated information to have any value change until that ultimately gives us something. Meanwhile, it's not my video game, okay? I'm you're right. It's your servers. Your servers suck. Right? Same thing for anything to do with most first person just story mode games. It's all of a sudden, I don't care about your server, and it displays only the changes as updatedly speaking you can change it. So how much do you want it to change by? I'm hitting my forward key button, all right, on your computer, right? And it's right, how how many times in a given second do you want it to change? You move this amount of times. It's like, can your computer handle I moved this amount? Can it? Can it? I just want to know. Can it? You know? Probably not. I did 10,000 movements. Oh, yeah, but did you? How much did they move? Like, what's the actual distance for the game that they allow for you to move? And that amount of, like, you know what I mean? Because, like, oh, this is the actual amount. And I'm like, okay, sure. Except that's the thing. They usually, when you constantly keep pressing it, have a given set of constant update tick values for that given game. And they all operate off that. You might not know that. I know that. You might not know that. So it's like, if I hit it like really fast in milliseconds of little tiny time, right? It's like, well, how much was that supposed to be? Right? So it's like, it translates that, whatever your game is, into this value that it sees, and it allows for it to change those values binarily, how it ultimately calculates. Right? And it does it really quick and really, really simply. That basic stuff, because it has to go through this CPU before it can go to this GPU, but the GPU could display this so much faster. That's the problem. It has to go and right. And so, like, a lot of current game designers know this problem, and so they go, this is crap. Like, honestly, I don't need that. Like, there's no reason for that. And so you saw for a while, like, this GPU got hammered. This, like, their actual, like, game development kits and more got hammered on the GPU. Like, because that makes the most sense. It's like the fastest way to do it, right? And it's like, well, hold on though. There's a lot of actual, like, calculation power over here, and actually you can really probably use that a lot for, like, a bunch of things, right? Except then they basically did a different version of what I'm talking about. So they went, all right, GPU just is displaying it like this, right? Except it's like, all right, well, I'm going to send it over to the CPU, and this, then waits to effectively receive that information. It's like this. It's already done. We'll change it like this because these things happen. God, fucking bitch. I have to update this. And then it goes through another clock cycle, and then it fucking changes it and it displays it. And it's like, well, that's a fucking letdown. That's slow as fuck, right? So it's like, all right, well, this given change right here, it's like, no, we can't do any of that because that's how our fucking actual binary set up. We can't do any of that. That sucks, right? So, like, they actually ended up going, all right, before we start the calculation of this, we'll have that arrive. And then that'll change ultimately what this is. And so, like, all these shaders and textures, we'll just load them, and right? And then we went to H.265 types of chunks and areas of a screen that would change effectively. And then that got removed back in, like, the mid-2000s or 2010, something like that. And then they were like, and then it got fucking hammered again, hard, for a long time. And they're like, Vulkan and architecture, meh. And I was like, this doesn't seem like DirectX or any of these other fucking things are really going to help you here. It seems an awful lot like you have to literally redo all of your binary programming from scratch. Why aren't you doing that? We don't have there's an operating system that runs it this way. And I'm like, can you make a new operating system? No, I'm not doing, no, I'm not. No, I'm never going to do that. Can you make the operating system? Oh, let me just fucking go be homeless real fast. Go through multiple mental health hospital stays, have all these other issues. Now I'm sitting here, like, just talking about this because I was seeing this Terrence Howard, like, 1 × 1 = 2. And I'm like, well, he'd be right if it was like this, but, like, otherwise. Otherwise, it doesn't really work, But, like, that's the problem. It doesn't sound logical in any aspect or way, right? Except until, like, you get to the point where you go, and this is why, actually speaking, unfortunately, you might not understand, surprise, surprise, why you were maybe taught something that doesn't, in the first place, make any real sense, which is just an odd thing to tell someone and, like, get them to actually agree with, because it's like, I would never believe in any aspect that that's the thing, that makes logical sense. You're just multiplying it times 3, and it's like, yeah, okay. I'm not really realistically, but, like, that's because multiplying by 1 doesn't make sense to begin with, and neither does by 0 or dividing by 0. It never did. It never does. So, but you can still keep it as 1 does nothing for what it's worth. It's just logically it doesn't really make much sense because it must be doing something. And so if 1 actually means it's a 0, then I suppose, sure. But otherwise, 1 doesn't mean that. It's this times itself. Right? And so then you mean that no way do you add anything, no way do you do anything at all, and instead you actually just do nothing. And it's like, that doesn't fucking make any sense either. And it's like, correct. But that's what they teach you. That's what math means. That order of operations doesn't make any fucking actual sense. And it never will, and never can. So the moment you think about that, it's like, oh, yeah, okay. Then, like, okay, I have to change that, unfortunately, for my own mind. But it's like, it's easy to immediately think about it. Like, no, it just does nothing because we were taught that way. Right? But it's like, that seems insane. Why would you say blah, 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 blah? But the point I'm trying to make is, like, it's not really, it's just a different way of doing it. It's just making sure that it's obvious that, like, 1 does actually do something, and then from there 2 will do something because it's effectively doing it twice to itself, like 1. If you can understand 1, it's like you multiply by itself, and then you don't have that mean nothing at all, because, like, what is it, like a negative or some other fucking weird number that then doesn't add anything to it? Like, what is this? What's actually going on? No. Don't look over here at us math people. We're you know, and I'm like, so instead now 1 definitely, it now knows it's a 1, and it now must do something. Because, like, it's the same thing with 2. It now knows it's the same thing twice, right? And it's like, right, it's like, it's the same thing and it's twice. But it's the same number and then you added it twice, is really what that's saying. Like, that's all it's always been saying. So it's like, convert 2 to same number twice, then add. That's what the order of operations shorthand has always meant here in any kind of multiplication. That's what X means. X means take whatever that is, and for these 0 and 1, do this. But then for all these other things, do this now. Right? And it makes no sense to do it that way, logically. Right? Except for the fact that, like, a bunch of people need to understand it initially pretty quickly, because it's like twice, 2, same number twice. You know, easy. Except then when you get older, like I was saying, it goes, yeah, but that doesn't really make as much sense, because I learned algebra. I learned algebra later. Like, I know exactly what that's the thing, yeah. So, like, that doesn't work. And it's like, yep. So, as a result of that, then you go, well, it really now means, because this is a 0 around an X, which is actually just a circle around an X, right? Then now means, actually, we're going to do this the real way. They say that they're doing it, but that's actually not the way that it actually works. Because, like, you can just get to 0 by subtracting or adding or whatever that you need to get to 0. So, like, fuck off. You know what I mean? Get the fuck out of here. But that's the problem. It's like, I know most people, when you multiply by 0, it should mean 0. But it's like, it won't display that if you're going to use it my way. It will if you want to use it old style math way, which is wrong way, which is bad way. It still works for all the rest of the ways. But it doesn't mean in any way that way is actually the way it should be. That's the problem. Rules have always changed, though, for what it's worth in math. It's just subtle things initially. You know, like the basic concepts of the number and whatnot have always kind of stayed the same. You know what I mean? Like, that's never changed. And how it is that you do the order of operations and why it is, those have more or less stayed the same-ish. Some things have changed. Some order of operations have changed. Stuff like that. Right? Because, like, I want you to get this number, not any of these other numbers that you can ultimately get, depending on how the order of operations goes. Which is such a weird thing, but, like, yes. Right? It's like, you're only allowed to do it this way, but it's like left to right. But then, like, this parentheses. I was like, okay, but then do I do it left to right again? You didn't specify that. No. But okay. And then they did BIMDOS instead of PIMDOS for a while. And it's like, they're already starting to look at, like, we need to think about this order of operations like this way instead of that whole thing. Point is, my math goes, times 1 means you just added itself to itself. That's all it meant. And then times 2, you did it twice. You added itself to itself twice. Right? But that number still remained there. Right? And it's like, you can remove that if you so chose, but that's a different symbol that I have. I know, right? That's the circle, right? But now instead of an X, I know, you get a pound sign. That's right. You get a pound sign instead of a circle, the little hashtag sign, right? And it's like all of a sudden it gets rid of that. It cancels. It turns it into a 0, and it goes like, take that number, put it over here to this fucking stupid number, which is now actually a symbol. Which I know it's like it's a 2 though. And it's like but actually it's a symbol 2, not a number 2. I get it. Weird still, but now it means it actually did it to itself twice, and it got rid of that. Right? Because like that's literally what they're trying to say, except they're like trying to be all like odd about it. It doesn't really work the way that they're saying. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not being odd. That's exactly what that is. Yeah, sure, except not really. Like, you're basically not saying what you're saying. You know what I mean? When they say like, no, but it's multiplying it by 2. It's like, but do you know what those words mean? Like multiplying that number by 2. Right. Okay, but like, and then the operations became take that number and then add itself by itself. Multiplying immediately means, it didn't say multiply, it said add by 2. By itself, actually. One time. Really, is what it meant. Except that doesn't work, because your mind immediately goes, but it's 2 though. See the 2, right? Like I said before, it did multiply. It was actually add by itself by just the one time. So it's like it doesn't work in any aspect. But like the moment you turn it into by 1, and then that's over there, and then you take that, and it goes like, and there's these 2 numbers here, right? What was it? The hashtag? No, oh no, it was the hashtag. Then fucking leave that one alone. It's this, and it's that now. We'll just leave that other one alone. But otherwise, if it's the X one, then it's like, oh no, that's still there. Just keep it still there. And like, that's why it did that binarily speaking. So that way it's like, it still works old style ways. Except 0 still, it does no value change. It does nothing at all. It displays no change. How it's supposed to. That's how it's supposed to work. Same thing with 1, right? It does itself, and it displays, and it keeps itself as itself, right? So you still have no change because that's a hashtag and a 0 kind of thing, right? But it's like, it's hybrid, old style, right? But it's like 0 still meant it did nothing. And that's all that did. But like now the symbol's different. Now the whole thing has to be different. Yeah, it's like looking up Old English. It's like Old English is hard to understand, right? But like they understood it really well. But it's like, we're like, what the fuck is this actually? What the hell is that? I don't understand that. And it's like, yeah. We don't, because like we weren't taught that way, and stuff evolved and language changed, right? But like math is relatively stayed the same. Not really fully, honestly. Like, order of operations change dramatically depending on at what point and where you are in the world, which is a misnomer to say the least. To most people who say math has always stayed the same. It's never stayed the same. But people don't tend to like that part, because like, my generation, I was taught this. I didn't deep dive into fucking math like it. And it's like, your kids are learning different math, and your parents used to say the same thing about you. So deal with it. Like, there's a reason why it's a very poignant, relatable thing for The Incredibles 2. And in my day, math was math. You know what I mean? It's like, this is what this is. We don't do it that way anymore. I'm going to get the answer wrong. Wouldn't you know it? We're talking about the same thing. Like, 0 shouldn't do anything. 0 should never do anything. 1 should do something. But you want 1 to do nothing. And Old English, old style math makes it want to do nothing, and that doesn't make any sense. 1 should not do nothing. You're multiplying an order of operations, so it obviously meant it does something, because 2 literally means do this. So as a result, you're wrong. What you're saying is factually doesn't make sense wrong. But that's because I'm going off of the logic they have for all this other stuff that does work very, very well. Their logic on this part, though, doesn't work in any aspect. That's all I'm changing. And binarily, how a computer works, it makes way more sense to do it this way, because of how our transistors and more work. It makes it much easier for us to calculate. Much faster, all in 1 clock cycle, too. way easier. So it becomes far better for our operating system to calculate that way. Right? Now, the thing is, no operating system does that. Mine, if I can get my ass to build it, because it's supposed to be called the God operating system, does that. It has a bunch of little fucking shorthand logic tricks that are really easy to understand, very logical, and makes it factually much faster to do everything and have any change occur. Right? But I describe it like a bunch of collapsing, kind of quantum superpositional values, but they're quasi in that sense. It's like the cache in this, and then it goes through like this, or it does a little bit like this, but it's not quite enough, stuff like that, right? But like, that's why that changes, because like if you're talking about like an internet thing, then it's like, and then it sends it off, and then we're synchronizing effectively. We're basically doing that version of things. It's like between every single given computer and the main server, every single thing effectively has any given change directed to all people. It's basically now just a router, effectively, that stores a given change value as a master backup copy. This master backup copy has these different changes that arrived at these different times, and then it goes and spits it out like, at this point, all of these are now updated like this, and then we're going to have, and then it just basically keeps doing that. So you send any given information, it goes, all right, this changed, and then it sends it out to every single given computer as this change actually happened. And depending on the timing value, of course, it has to send it at different times, so that way everybody sees it as at the same time, roughly. The problem is, it's like, I have 100 milliseconds. Yeah, huh? Everybody's playing at 100 milliseconds. Could you leave? God! Not really, for what it's worth. But fucking hell. Could you leave? 100 milliseconds is too damn high. Please leave. You need to leave. Please. Please leave. Vote fucking kick this bitch. I have a 430 hertz fucking ping rate server, bastard. Update tick thingy. Fucking leave. I want this to be updated properly. Doesn't matter if I could display 440 fucking hertz. Who gives a shit? You know what I mean? So, but like for standard, regular, story mode kind of thing. Oh, it makes total sense. Like, it's just going to update based upon like what your max really realistically speaking could change. And since it only needs to display whatever change it is, then it makes it way faster. And always like, no, this shading slightly changed because of these movements over here, and you're only going to need to know those types of changes, right? Which makes it much easier because that's a pixel by pixel kind of style, right? Versus like a chunk by chunk, and like pixel by pixel is like a lot easier actually in many aspects, especially for contrast shading, stuff like that. That means only this amount of value has to change at any given point. And depending on how like that backwards and forwards talk between your monitor and your graphics card is, that means like only need about this amount of change, So like becomes much faster for response times and everything to get risen way up. But the problem, of course, is ping. Ping is a killer. Ping sucks. If you're that like far away with that much of a lag, it's just a destructive entity to your entire server. Okay, so one of my other ways of getting around that using net types of techniques was, so the server can be an offset calculator to a degree. However, whoever's in the actual middle part of all of the different pings, lags between everybody, then becomes, right, you still display this is still the master copy, except you don't have any host privileges, you don't have like any real advantage. Everything goes through you in a lot of ways, and you're just changing slight values. Then the main server like updates off of that, and it helps you effectively make sure you don't have to worry about your computer dying off of that amount of traffic. Along with like your computer just not needing to worry about certain updates from you, right? Like your update's a part of the master backup, so like you'll do that, and then it checks off of that. So like as it sends out in its path, it only needs to know the offset value, which is a weird way of saying it's sending information to this area between any one of you, and it's synchronized between you and this, and then it goes, this changed that value to you at the other end of that other computer, right? Right, because it gets your value basically a little bit sooner. Although there's a couple of different techniques on that one, because it usually means a rotational type of thing. So like it looks like it's now such that everybody has the same ping and things are going faster, but the lag latency, well, yes, we did get it to be lower, we also happened to perform the equivalent of everything got slower and more laggy. Just it's not as bad as it could have been. That kind of thing. Which it's like this goes to send it to there, but actually it's sending it to these multiple spots, and then that changes the value to the main server. That kind of thing. So, but like you updating all of that kind of sucks. So like you take a massive hit to performance. Okay? So instead it's like, no, actually it's just going to change these values as necessary, and it won't update your value until those values are allowed to change, heading backwards after you've changed a value. So it then updates based upon that next change. And so what you'll see is like in this little circle, as it goes off to wherever it is, it then effectively sent to you. You'll think something has happened, but actually it has to update, which is where the glitchy thing, like that old like ghost dun 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 started happening, and you can somehow like maybe think you're over here, but in reality it's not going to look like that, right? Instead it turns it into like, okay, so you moved like this, but like in reality what it sees is that you moved this way, right? And all of this moved all these other ways, right? And that's fine. However, that is not really the case. Okay, so like you're going to send it another update, and this update from this, which is the master, goes from the server, says this, and then that offset of value, which is what we're talking about here, okay, then happens to be updated. But also it means that those in between values got changed in between them and there. So that then it calculates, knowing that this got sent to you and these values changed, and then you send off these other values. It says, well, that's a stored bit of information actually that then changes at this arrival point of these different areas between it gets to your computer. So those different areas then changed as a result of that, and you didn't need to calculate for those given changes. You just need to, update your side, and effectively your side as well as all these other, send out like what you did on your screen and so on. Okay? Then those values get changed differently depending on, really realistically speaking, those different areas in between. Right? And then that also updates the master backup copy on the server. Okay, that master backup copy didn't just change, it goes predictively, it's likely to be like these things. So I'm already setting up for that, right? And then like this then has the next sent value, and it goes, all right, and if it matches, it doesn't do anything. And it doesn't match, it goes, right, this then needs to change like this, and then it sends. And so like that's basically a recirculatory and then backwards and forwards resonance harmonic ping, as it goes backwards and forwards and it goes around. But it changes the given value that you see displayed as the given information, internet protocol wise, that you get for your game relative to everybody else's game. A roundabout way of saying it's like a superposition in a circle almost, in the right way, that then changes because then you send something towards it, and then when it sent something towards it as a stored thing, it then goes like, and then it went no, and so then it changed it to being the real thing, and then that changed the value as to where the main copy is and your copy too, as that will then get sent over, and then your value will change as well as the value, and then it will update, and that will update the master server backup copy that then also relays and changes based upon that. And it's always trying to update constantly, so that way the dropped superpositional values combine and then have this one value as the only outcome. that's supposed to be delivered binarily, but it's faster, which is the real reason, except everything technically got slower as fuck, and it sucks a little bit. If it's like everybody just had a good ping to this one fucking server, everything would be better. Who's this dick with fucking 200 ping bastard? Who the fuck are you? Can you go away? Only sub 75 ping allowed in this server. It's not going to allow you. And then the third and final one was, so it'll take a lobby of a bunch of people and it'll match you within your given area as to who has the lowest ping, and then it matches the one single person that's the closest to every single one of them, except it doesn't allow for that change, which is what it used to do in Xboxes, right, and more, which is like intranet setups, port forwarding stuff, right? Except in this one, we're not doing port forwarding. Fuck that bullshit. That's like a literal hacker's paradise right there, so don't do that. Instead, it goes, like, you're not actually the server. And in fact, we're going to treat every single fucking little stupid thing on the way as the server. That's the synchronized part. I know. We're like, hey, I know you're an ISP, but like every hop along the way... it's going to get set up with this little fucking synchronized, like little backwards and forwards fucking information that then gets stored technically just long enough to be there in that moment. And it goes like, and then this update, and then that update goes backwards, and then this update is also being sent to you. And so it goes, and it changes it. And then you get seen as this, and then they get seen, and like everybody's calculating like cloud computing. That's what that would be. Cloud computing synchronizational kinds of computational playing. Everybody technically offloads to everyone's computer, and you're all intranetted effectively to no server, but what is intranet versus internet? But that's kind of an old like fucking saying for people that know anything about internet, because it's like they're all technically intranet and LANs, but we call it wide because like it goes to like one big modem router that goes to a bunch of other big modem router server things that contain information you like, and then they go to all the other ones that are... I'm gonna move on. Imagine it like that, because it's like this is one big old Ethernet cable that goes all the way over to there, and then that one Ethernet cable goes to all these other ones, and then some of them also go to all these other ones that are even bigger and more. There's a branching out network thing. It's like one little branch then went into another bunch of branches, and that's what a WAN is. But it's like that's what LAN is. Like you could do that in your home. Like there's no real change there. So I'm gonna move on because like that gets long-winded. So instead, what it's doing is effectively making ISPs already do the work that they were already doing, just doing work that makes it do work for you in a cloud computing sense, which is nice. Except that also means everybody gets an averaged out, latency. And so then you have to constantly update like these two points, and then it has to wait to that, and then and then it calculates, and then it goes send something to your screen. So like depending on how much of a given type of lag that you want, you can specify that in your lobby, which is the whole game development kit I was talking about in my audio blog thing. Of course, I didn't really quite talk about that. However, I just want to talk about this because it's like, well, this is the math behind that. And it's not using imaginary math, it's using logical math that makes way more sense than what you were usually taught. However, it's not math that most people will use, except that in certain physics, they absolutely do use this math. So 0 will do nothing in certain types of math. Same thing with 1. It will just add itself back in. You know what I mean? And different physics do this differently, which is a whole thing. So once you get into the real world, which doesn't care about your fifis, and math, like I taught myself math this way, or I think of math this way, or I was taught math this way, I don't care. None of them care. None of them ever care. They all have their own types of math, and that some of them do that, and it's like, you're going to have to fucking put up with that, because you throw that out the window of everything you've ever learned, because it doesn't matter. Except, like, in this instance, it's like, well, it still does that. It just does depend. And binarily, with how architectures and CPU transistors work, I can change a given value in volt for these things, and that will give me the result I'm looking for my basic math, because it effectively doesn't just send that 0 over there, it also changes the given result of forward directional amount of energy, electricity, as it goes through, which is the equivalent of it effectively makes a charge value, a certain percentage of watt, drop a little bit, and that's more than enough for each one of those. And it can be parallelly done at once and then arrive as a next given sequence of transistor in the row, which then combines that, and then we get from that a precise not percentage number, right? So, but that's also why the binary is 4. It takes a given binary, by the way, and stores that as a breakout sequence and in order of operations, right? But it's this binary doesn't mean this. This first 2 sets up for this, and that changes based upon its architecture. Not architecture. The BIOS. The CPU BIOS has its own type of, you guessed it, different binary, right? So every binary, every program changes as it comes in. So that first one sets up, and it sets up automatically the cache that's going to be there for those given areas, right? And that's the dynamic. Every single different type of pen changes everything, and it has to store that as it then delivers to where it's going to effectively get any new thing to calculate as a change to that given input of electricity. That's BIOS for the motherboard and RAM, that kind of thing, which we already do. So effectively, it's just making it better. The next 2 actually kind of calculate, except the third one doesn't just the first one doesn't just set up, it sets up for the third one, or the next one in line, to really kind of do the value system and what it really means, and that kind of thing, right? And the third one then effectively actually does the calculation, and it goes through and it breaks out and does all that stuff. And then the fourth one effectively stores that information, and then it goes, yes, well, based upon that information being this, and this information, is it doesn't just store it, it relates it to being this, and it changes the first series of 1 and or 0, what's going to come out of that pin as that, effectively next 4, right? So it means this, it does this, and that's relating to all these other changes that have already happened effectively in the cache, as it now needs to get sent down its pin, down the trace, down to the GPU, and then change anything, basically, or the internet, or whatever it is. So that's what it's doing, right? But it's a breakout. So 4 isn't really 4. Okay, 4 is this. These 2 relate like this to these data tables, and then these 2, because they set up like this, mean this breakout, and because it has to go through this given sequence of breakout, because that's this first one, which means this data table, and then this one, which is this breakout sequence, right? And then these 2 then mean actually it's this 4 by 4, so it's 4, 4, and 4, 16 total bits. It's a data table, but it's that data table isn't a normal data table, because that can be broken out indefinitely. Each 4 can also be broken out into another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and in all these changes is given sequence of breakout, and change to that breakout, and what that breakout actually means, and how to break it out, and what that actually means. So that second one could be, you think, oh, because it's a 1 or a 0, it's no, depending on where it arrives and when it arrives, because it's always doing this timing-wise, it changes what that actually means and what the actual binary relates to and all the rest. So it never is known, it's always encrypted. It's always seemingly random, except then I made it a lot more random, because remember the whole transistors can, depending on how you change them, alter ultimately what arrives and gets through and what it means in relation to anything else. Behold! Yep. But it's no, remember WPA, which is oh, I need to get this prime number for this whatever the fuck thing, right? No. Fuck that idea. Think it more in this instance, the little dot in a series of dots, right? A big, what do they call it? It's the quantum equivalent of from tracing. We're talking about tracing, basically. But it's it's a square of dots, right? It's you can start anywhere on there, and has to arrive to the right place, the right way, in the right number of sequences and everything else. And that's generally speaking what it is, right? It's a pretty good way to do it. And now it's okay, that's cool, except you don't know the number of sequences, you don't know like how it is and where it is and if it moves or does anything, right? All that. And by the way, the dots can be different density, different sizes, and the lines can be too, and so on. And that's basically what their current quantum encryption programming is about, right? But it's like, yeah, no, but that's kind of stupid because I could still eventually brute force that. So you usually have an exception error, but it's like, depending on ultimately how the information is set up, that can change your intrusion to that encryption breakout. So it's like, depending on how much you know about that setup initially, that changes how it is, ultimately speaking, you can properly send that the right way to get the information to be hacked, which is a way of breaking that quantum encryption with like next to nothing, So it's like, fuck that. But that's the first layer, because like that's a good way to do it. But it's like first layer of encryption gets you to do now the second. Like this is like a tier thing that I do. So it's like the second one is an entirely different thing. So you start with this given sequence that starts off. It's like, think dots, they move around and they all land somewhere. But like depending on ultimately you have to put the right type of dot in, it has to move the right way, and it all has to land in the right spot. If you don't do that the right way, guess what happens? Well, it didn't work. Wouldn't you know it? But it's like the reason why that works so well for me is because of how I'm setting up my breakout binary, as it always is changing off of that. There's no static ever. It's always dynamic. Right? But it's like, no. I have a third one. Right? This one comes pre-installed with these exact dots. Right? Like it's always the same. This one, there is nothing like that. And in fact, these all have different values. They can be different sizes, different movements, and everything. Right? It's like, and depending on what you put in, will change that. But also, even if you put in the right thing, hey, guess what? Guess who has to put in all the rest of those things the right way? So that way, you get the actual thing to be cracked. Super awesome as an encryption method, because it all has to move, it all has to do it in a 3-dimensional space over a 4th-dimensional time to arrive at the right way in the right spot and all the right things. You have to solve P versus NP, which truthfully speaking you were doing for the first one, but a lot less hard, because like there's only so many paths. Like honestly, it's actually not that hard, depending on how you set. Like it's the same thing. It's like if you have the hash and you know what the encryption method is, then that hash can only be made as a result of these pathways for these encryption methods, which means it massively narrows down the actual prime it can ever be, which is one of the reasons why nobody ever uses that for real serious encryption stuff. For anyone that knows how to break shit like that. Same thing for like the quantum one where you have to trace it. It's like, actually, depending on how that is, and if you already know these things, then you actually know more than likely how to do that the right way. And it wouldn't take that many of tries to get there. Even if it looks like it's random, it's not very random. The second one is kind of a similar thing. It all arrives the same way. There's only so many different things, truthfully, if you know the setup ahead of time. But the only way to know that setup ahead of time is to have broken the first one. Okay? Right? But it's like to break the first one doesn't actually give you the next one. It just means that you know this setup and you know that thing, but then you have to brute force again all of those other ones. As a result of it already knowing, and there's no way to have known, because even if you know this first setup, that actually doesn't relate to the second one, right? The third one is just to make you fucking hurt. Because like that actually helps with the dynamic changes of the BIOS and binary that are always changing and always making sure that they more efficiently, effectively, it's not really more efficiently, but trying its best to deliver any of your calculations through any of the given types of transistors to any given core to properly spit out the right result and have it change correctly the right way and have it change along its path changing to still arrive at the right way, right? But that's first and second and third all doing that, which is one of the reasons why I talk about this as my God operating system, right? So the third one is an entirely different one because it's always randomizing what this will be, but it always has that random as a result of the other randoms that are influencing its random, which you can only break out into this other random that will then mean that it's the right calculation. I get 3 randoms and I get the right answer at the end. Kind of weird stuff, but hey, it works really, really well. Now, you'd have to get into different physics and mathematics for that, but I'm going to move on because that's not this video. Okay? However, what this video is about is describing that math, which effectively helps, remember that? Like, it does nothing, right? And then it did something, right? And then it does this thing differently, but like this, and it's basically the same thing, right? Except that's exactly what that is for this third one. This third one relates, just like with that fourth one, as it goes through during the same clock cycle, right? To arrive at having that information for the very first one that really did the calculations get changed and then sent the right way, as it also has that information stored and altered and the change in pattern and sequences through the tracer as it gets sent as the 1 and 0 to presumably your GPU or wherever it needs to go to. Right? So it changes that and it stores that and it knows how to sequence it as a result. That's all it's doing. Right? But it's like you can't catch it when it's doing that. Like you just can't. Because it's altered every single time. Right? So it's like it literally makes it impossible for me to know and relate any information to any information, all while also encrypting it and then changing the sequence and then in compression because it's doing that. Yeah, it's compressing it. That's the thing. It's compressing it during that. It's like, oh, then this is multiple different breakouts then compressed into this sequence of 4. As it sends it off to this, it then now knows to do it that way. Right? That's the first IP, and then the first real calculation, and then the result of change to the calculation to be sent the correct way. But also changes it to the 4 binary to do it all over again. So the third one's a different one, because like that doesn't actually change anything except for the fact that it does change things, right? It's like the second one is like, oh, I have to get the right freaking, but it'll go through this thing and then it'll land, and like theoretically speaking, I could do it. And saying, yeah, well, you know, it's right. That's a 2D. It's probably not that hard, you know, depending on all these other values. Like, depending, truthfully speaking, because sometimes I decide to add, well, it has different heat values, it has different oscillative values, it has different, you know, these other things. But it's still 2D. I'm a bit of a dick. I'm a big dick sometimes. Because it's like, no. Behold, the third one. It's 3-dimensional. It's also going to have the 4th dimension, which, by the way, the second one doesn't really technically have, as it's static. This one's changing at all times, and it's never the same. So if you had it for one problem, you managed to get nowhere, most likely, and it changed the next one. Even though it's still the same, hopefully you still have that information. Yeah, no, it's broken. It's gone. It's never there. Behold, that's right. If you don't get it one-shotted throughout the entirety of that, you're as fucked as fuck could be. So, it changes randomly, and it changes its values. It changes the area of effect, heat, static charge, all this other stuff effectively. Because in order for you to get this to be unencrypted, that's the same basic kind of sequence and patterns of events that it needs to know and store and change on its delivery path and have as relatable information that also changes its information as it's going to be delivered and then be correctly calculated over there, as that's also still talking to the CPU and or GPU as it's doing this. And it knows that that sequence was sent like this as it changes those values initially stored. See what I mean? It's like those initial values, I could use those, right? And it's like, no, they're fucking practically random and it would never be the same. Like, and I mean practically in the very real sense that it's as close to random as you could get. As in, even a number generator isn't stupendous. It looks quite random. We don't know in a 4th dimension or a 5th dimensional aspect if it is actually that random. It looks quite random. It's going to look random to us, 3-dimensional people, but we don't know. So there's that. But like, it's random for us, right? So it's like it changed it not only randomly, but also as a result of information that's already over there, and so on. And that's always being related to each other. So like it will arrive the right way with the right type of sequence, with the right type. So all of it's done the right way. But that information that's stored there is already changing. As in, it stored that and it will arrive there and it will be the right information then and there, and as it goes through every single transistor and every single given cache and every single core. but only when it does that at that point, at those moments, and no other time otherwise. What's stored there is no longer staying the same. It's never going to. It's always compressing, encrypting, and randomizing. But it's doing that to calculate. So both together equal good. Not both together equal, what the fuck, you just killed my entire performance. Both together equal, I beat the shit out of everyone else's operating system, and I make it so I use quasi-quantum programming for everything. Not both together, none of this is good, all of it's bad, shut up. It would never work. That's the dumbest idea I've ever seen or heard. And I'm like, yeah, no, blah, 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 blah. Says the overconfident person usually there that thinks that that would work somehow if I separated the two. It won't work. You're right. Fellas, any of that. Guess what? You're correct. There's no fucking way that works. It's the wrong way to do it. But the way I'm doing it works perfectly. It's the right way to do it. It's the only way to do it, as it only makes sure that it always gets exactly the most efficient, roughly speaking, way to do it in the fastest period of time, while also making sure only what's necessary changes and updates and everything else with its storage too, because it keeps that as a given stored value, because that's the operating system. Of course, that changes based upon, because it knows this sequence, and it's like, all right, well, that's, and on the line, on the way, it then changes and then gets calculated as normal and necessary. Nothing changes. Of course, nothing's ever really stored, really realistically, the way you might expect, which is kind of rough for most people, because it's like, remember that sequence and all that? Yeah, no. Like, I store it as basically a bunch of zeros and ones, but I basically fill the entire hard drive up. But, like, depending on, like, this chunk over here, and as it delivers this way, it'll go through this sequence, and then, like, that's a multiple dimensional thing, as it changes it from, like, this one that's filled to a zero. And it doesn't matter if it's random or sequential, and it's read and write, because they're all filled up anyways, basically. So it just goes to and reads it like that, basically, because it knows it like this given series of reads. It knows there's this given series of writes. It knows there's this given series, and it constantly changes its multiple matrixy dimensional movement, but it's not moving. Of course, that doesn't change that the calculator effectively just goes and do it like this in a series of these sequences, as everything has really pretty much become a multitude of multiple sequential reads and writes. Always, except it's always doing that all the time as a bunch of instructions, with ultimately speaking how it goes and sees something. And it goes, this one, which would be over here as this sequence, is actually 0 for that. Right, so imagine, like, even if it's the electrons are there and it's a fully whatever solid state charge, whatever thing it is, it doesn't see it like that. But it sees it as any of these things that I want it to see it as necessary. And it can do that almost indefinitely for the various different types of sequences and patterns for how it needs to get to any of those informations, which they can still ultimately be fully fold up as a 1 or as all zeros. So that's the cool part. But when it does do something with it, okay, it does change its value. But of course, it then records that value change and then changes the result of sequences and everything else. As that changes, kind of like this is the internet protocol that I was talking about for the master, server backup versus this over here, which is your computer. Same thing. It's like, if you think I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this same thing over here. Why wouldn't I? I don't know. I know. So I'm going to do that, and it basically means I get dimensional, multiple moving compression encryption states, which effectively means I have any one of these equaling any number of different 1 and 0 patterns and sequences as it has to go through that the right way, which effectively means, yes, while you think it only has this storage because there's only this many blocks, it doesn't have that many blocks. It actually has, because of this many different sequences and everything else that it needs for this given type of thing, actually any amount of that I can, depending on the value of exponentials. So these are exponentials. That 1 can also be a 0. That's nice. I mean, that's a double. It's like, but see, that's the thing, depending on the the sequence it goes through. That means, and how it changes it, it's actually a near infinite exponential. And I say very much near for a reason. Depending on how much time you have to take to get it is what you ultimately resultively have to spend. Now, depending on how it is you chunk that information, which that's the other thing, we're talking about parallelization now. So multiple parallelizations of multiple different read sequence like this, and these types of patterns, in this type of way, and these types of meanings, and this types of binary, then suddenly comes out to meaning it does this. So that initial one as a single one-dimensional line has turned into, with the first one that I talked about, a 2D realm. That 2D realm then has this sequence and this and this and this. That's cool, but it's just a 2D. I say, with a 4D kind of like situation going on. Except there's actually more 2D for the first 1 and 0. And then I made it more 3D with the sequence and everything else, as it has both depth and movement and change over fourth dimension. Then I was like, yeah, no, but like depending on how I parallelize that, and then fourth dimensional, I made a 5D version of storage of a multiple matricey thing that moves and changes its value and still keeps your operating system and everything else in order and tip-top shape, knowing exactly where it is and what it's referencing to, and changing it practically all the time, except not really, okay? Like, it's still stored as this, and that sequence and everything else has to be stored, and so on, right? But, like, it changes only as necessary as what's changing over here is needing to change. So when you ultimately do something, it goes, this has changed. It goes, oh, that's what this means. And then it goes, and then it gets you your information. Just like always before. So it actually is very fast at delivering all of your information, even if it's terabytes, even if it's exabytes, even if it's petabytes, even if it's dodeco, whatever the fuck, decillion, trivigentillion bytes. It'll get you it like that. But it's like, for people that don't know why it would be like that, it's like, yeah, no, it's because I just explained that. Like, remember that 4, right? That can be broken out in the right breakout sequence for hash for how that works, because this is basically what this is, right? Except I only need the 4, except I only technically need the 2, but I actually technically only need the 1, right? Remember, because it all gets broken down into 1 that actually does do the calculations, and then it gets stored as the informational value, right? It's like, behold, the problem of all of your ideas of this not working. The binary makes it for all ways to work such that multiple dimensions have occurred to work with inside of each other to both read, then write, and then change values, and that changes its sequence as a multitude of multiple different sequential breakouts. And that also changes how it reads. As it does that, it gets effectively better at parallelizing and reading it as a seemingly random thing. Except it's never random for the calculations going on. Which means trivigentillion gets broken out perfectly as still one single binary blip bloop whatever thing, and everything else still works the same. But that also means that it's like you have to, kind of like somewhat store some of that on there. And from that, depending on how it needs to start the process, then it'll get you your trivigentillion, which is a real number. It's 10 to the 72, which is a lot of bytes. Okay, that's a fuck ton of bytes. Nobody has that many bytes. But it's like, behold, my 1 terabyte hard drive now suddenly has trivigentillion spaces. Look at how my trivigentillion spaces go, But it's using quantum and quantum physics and Dr. Michio Kaku's string theory, dimensional physics, to work it out. But in a much faster, less calculatively intense way. As that's also the CPU that's on the actual controller, and the controller itself's binary has to be changed. It doesn't do it the way that it does it. My God operating system basically stores that as a breakout program that'll, if you want to stop my operating system from controlling it and running its controller, then it'll go back and you can sell it or do whatever you want with it. But otherwise, it removes that bullshit and it goes, my shit's better, fuck you, do it this way. And then you end up getting ridiculous amounts of space. Now, depending on how you do that and how you deliver it and everything else is really what you get for the total volume of space. And you usually what that means really, you usually have to sacrifice a certain amount of time for initial calculations. Okay, so that's really what that tends to turn into. It's like, it's this many different cells, right? And it's like, it can be combined in this many different types of ways, right? And like, the more you ultimately have to store on there for these many different types of ways, that means it stores on it a data table that says this many different types of things, and this is what it relates to. But it's like, it doesn't need to know the relation until it needs to break it out. So it goes, this relation will mean this to us like this. And it knows that BIOS, both for the motherboard and the power delivery, but also for the CPU, but also for the GPU, but also for its power delivery, and for everything else, even your RAM, even your internet little chip and your North chip and whatever versions of chips you've got on there. It takes all of its binary out and it says, fuck that binary. That binary is stupid. You should have fucking thought better. Why is that binary there? Do this binary instead. And deliver it like this and do these things and constantly talk like this and change only when necessary. You need to change something. That's it. Only then. So, and that's why it does translating programs super, super well. It's like, look, I'm going to observe you effectively trying to send this stupid, because it knows what that is. It's like, this binary says to do this way. Your binary is shit. You should fucking change that. All right, I'm going to just let it go through binarily because it says it's doing it this way. Sometimes it doesn't. So we're going to have it go through with this architecture. It says, yeah, because it's like, no, this CPU is like this. I swearsies. I swear it's definitely that. Behold, this is actually what the, and then, hey, look at this tiny teensy amount of actual stored data for this 100 gigabyte video game. Yeah, I'm not gonna fucking fuck that bullshit. Are you kidding me? No. Says these are the instructions that you also have to constantly. What? Oh, for fucking sending. It's a fucking single player game. Why does it need to be connected to the fucking internet? I'll just send a pulse. It'll never fucking affect the actual game. You don't even need to be to the internet. And in fact, when you don't have it connected, it won't do it. So fuck off. Or just do it the right way so you don't have any problems or messes up on your binary for your video game you fucking paid for that you shouldn't have. Okay? Go fuck yourself hard. Whoever fucking programmed that. That is the stupidest thing. It's never necessary. It's literally never necessary at all to do it. But it'll translate that way, and it'll turn it into my binary, and it'll store it in its ultra compressed, easily understood state. Super simple. And then it doesn't need anything unless it needs it at that point, which then just stores it as a series of values that will change as necessary. Which means those are also compressed binary states that take up almost no space whatsoever and go through their sequence while calculating in their different sequential patterns and pattern sequences. Standard shit. But they're all seemingly random. But, like, is that dimensionally here? Or is it not? Because it sounds like to me, dimensionally, nothing's actually random there at all. And you can't possibly calculate for this, except it's calculating using that. And it's for sure knowing what it is at that point, and it's doing it the right way. Which effectively is the opposite of what everybody fucking says for layman's terms physics. Layman's terms physics says no. Real physics says, nuh-uh, that's exactly what I can do. Go fuck yourself. But I'm doing it in a multiple dimensional aspect, which turns into the fifth dimension, which is a cool thing. You know what I mean? Like this sequence and change and pattern as it delivered, it's a fifth dimensional change that effectively occurs faster than light as a result of it not needing to know that informational change except for this change. Whole thing doesn't really matter. It does do that. It just doesn't, work for people to think in a fifth dimensional aspect the vast majority of the time. So I go, yeah, so you don't need to know about that. Instead, it just think about it. It's arriving at the right time in the right way, and everything works out just fine. Versus what it really is, which is effectively a multitude of multiple fifth dimensions moving in a fourth dimensional manner, creating a third dimensional calculation in a quasi-quantum computing manner. But could we do different that? No, you cannot. That's the God operating system. You know what I mean? But it's like, it's still not on, the stupendous levels, right? But, it's still what it is, because that's all that's necessary. Like, that's what I was talking about for, like, the GPU towards the beginning. It's like, it only needs to change these values for this given watt and volt for this sequence to mean that for that monitor or TV to change in these pixel areas for this GUI to mean this is now a 0. That's all it needs to do. And so it'll do that. It could do that really fast. It doesn't need to do anything really all that much, truthfully speaking, to do that. Because it doesn't need to store those values as a given type of thing. It just will automatically be doing that, and then it does it. That's like analog, except I'm turning an analog into multiple analogs that use multiple digital changes, as it's a technical, over time, fourth dimension change, along with a fifth dimension change that's happening that can get stored during the 2 and 3 dimensional calculations. Of course, most people don't know about what the hell it is I'm talking about, so I'll say it like normal people say it, which is battery go slightly lower and capacitor go slightly lower. Value go through transistor different, and then different change happens at resultive in pin that says burr to thing that goes burr mean this, and then changes it. As mean as that is, to a degree, it's still what it's doing. It's just setting it. Anytime you turn on your computer, it's always just setting up what those values are going to ultimately be and starting to do it, from that last point. Those values are kind of somewhat stored regardless, and that's kind of how the operating system works. It'll go run through all of your chips, and it will brute force crush their binary. And I mean that. Like, it's the worst part for, like, anyone that's like, no, my binary is very much hidden behind the lock and key. I don't care what it says. It deleted it. And then it went like, this is what it meant, basically. Because it goes like, and I'm running it through this way, and I'm receiving it back this. That means it's doing this, and this is the only binary it can be doing for any of these types of things that it was sent through this way. Which means this is the only binary it has, and this is what it's going to store as. Before we ultimately delete it, it goes, and so I'll check that. And it slightly changes it this way. All right, and then it goes, all right, that's exactly what the binary. We try it again. Oh, it's exactly what it comes out as. Nothing changed. So then it then does, nope, store that over here, get rid of that bullshit, do it this way. This is the better way. This is what this really actually means for this CPU or bunches and series of chips. In the transistor sense for cores. This is what the core really is doing. It doesn't matter what it fucking is. It just knows that it does this, and that's all it needs to know. It stores that, and it says, this is what you can use it as for this. And it goes throughout all of them, all the way into your monitor and or TV. That's right. All of them. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't care. It's never going to care. But it also starts effectively deleting the shit out of BIOS, because it makes a better BIOS, makes a better GPU BIOS, makes a better CPU BIOS, it makes a better RAM BIOS, makes a better internet chip BIOS, makes everything better. Even your hard drive BIOS is fucking shit. You should have done it this way instead. Why didn't you? Like, literally the definition of just stabbing them. Get better at programming. God, why are you so bad? Meanwhile, it's not really, but it's like, I tried my best. It's like, you're right, but like, this is definitely what we're doing now. So basically simple stuff like that, and it still stores it, and when it deletes it, like, it'll keep it like that. But like, that's the thing where it's like, no, this is still what it's going to do. And your little flash drive or your little CD, if you decide to use that somehow, or whatever version that you want it to do it on, it will do that, and it'll store all of that information, keep it as it needs to, and keep it on your hard drive And in fact, you won't really notice much of a difference. To be fair, though, I'm kind of like treading on like this. It's copyrightable, technically, right? That I'm doing, because it's like, wait a second. Uh-oh. No, it's not Windows, though. But it looks a little like Windows, doesn't it? Yeah. It's like, that's where my placement of my bar is and all this. No. Hey, it's close. Not the same thing. No. That's not what this is. You can't do that. No. You can't do that. But can I make that? I mean, I suppose if you wanted to change it specifically to look exactly like that, you can do that. But otherwise, it doesn't do that. It's like, no, you're making it so that way my encrypted behind all this bullshit BIOS fucking binary crap that I have for my fucking program. Yeah, I don't care. It still does this binarily. I don't give a shit. Everybody can easily fucking scan that if they wanted to. It wouldn't be that hard. I don't see why the hell you don't do it for like everything. Because that's how you can translate for any Linux, any fucking Mac, any given Windows, any of it. And it'd be perfectly set up for all of your binary in your operating system. I don't see why a lot of people don't do that. But, you know, then you have kernel level BIOS binary access, and you can just remove certain like tracers and trackers and, you know, advertisements and watch for malware and anything that's not supposed to be going and doing that and more. Oh no, we would never want to do that. How the fuck do I do this? Where's this fucking thing? Where's this on the Googs? Oh, right, Goog's probably gonna fucking make sure I don't do that. That's probably not a good idea. How do I fucking find this on the Onion? Dark way. It's like, no, my fucking movies. No, my programming of any sort. Oh, I wouldn't want it to work with my operating system. Or my computer. No. Shut up, you. We... Hey. Yeah, well, sure, yes, but like... There's reasons why we don't want people to know. I don't have to break the fucking code. I don't have to... I can just watch it run. I can just watch it run and I get all the information. I don't need to know it. Binarily, it's still what it is. It doesn't matter if it runs through several different architectural encryption bullshits. Because you don't do this, it definitely doesn't, ultimately speaking, mean anything. I can easily look at it and watch it and observe it and then store that and then keep it and know everything about it. I don't need to break your encryption. That's the thing. I never will. But your encryption can only be done this way. That's the point of like that breakout that I was talking about. Like that primary number or whatever version you want, because effectively it can only go through this way, and you're already well aware what that fucking hash is and more. It can only mean this. And it only means because of this architecture and any of these other things, it will only be binarily this. Which means from there, you already know what that means. Like if you know what that effectively is for this, whatever program, software, game, doesn't matter. It now means in relation to these things, which is program-wise, for this display, for this given type of keyboard, for this given mouse, it means this. That means this is what it does. This calculation means this physics. This calculations mean this type of physics and display. That's all it's ever going to mean. It can only ever mean that. People don't get that part. But it's like, no, you can easily get all information of any program like that. You can have it perfectly, easily. You just have to observe it. You never have to break encryption. Although, like, technically you could do that if you wanted to do the other breakout. Because it's like, well, it's coming in like this binary with and it's like, yeah, right. And then what's the encryption? Well, you know, it's very likely to be any of these types. All right, then just brute force it like that. Then why wouldn't you just do that? Just, hey. Meanwhile, why don't you just make it triple random, encrypted, compressed, and have it break out using calculation. Wait. Have it calculate by being that way and turning itself that way in all of that. So that way it does everything right, all when it needs to, exactly at the point where it needs to. Yeah, but they don't do that. Yeah, well, yours is fucking phenomenally, insanely hard to think about. Yeah, no, it's not, though. It's actually really simple. Yeah, but it's not. It's really really pretty easy. You just got to know about some of these basic stuffs. It's really not that hard. It's like if I were to walk like this and then I swing my arm like that and then I happen to shake someone's hand at that exact moment, and that meant I somehow did winner, winner, chicken dinner. Well, ultimately, did I not perform everything I needed to the right way? But again, you're not getting it. I don't understand it like I walked and then, fuck off, bitch. You're right, I had these number of heart pulses, this delivery of synaptic network electricity, and did all these other things, and then I eventually did that thing. Again, fuck your ass. Okay, you're programming like our brains and our bodies. You can't do that. I just described how you can do that. Fuck you again. Screw your ass. No. It's really not that hard. I don't see what the problem is. You do it every day. Just observe yourself a little bit. Become a little bit more self-aware. What the hell is the problem? Again, this is like, I clearly know for a fact that you're not that good at doing that. Like, I'm very obviously like shitting on you, just in a very, very different way. Because it's like, you do that every day, no matter what. Like, you are doing that. You don't observe it, but I do. I have no trouble with that. I know all these different maths and all these different physics and all these different things because, like, I basically wanted to do something like this, right? And it's not that hard to fucking do this. For me, in, like, the sense of thinking about it, but, like, actually sitting down at a computer and, like typing that is not super easy for me. And so, like, that's kind of the thing. But that's also one of the reasons why I want to talk about the math. It's like the math is, like, really simple. You know what I mean? Like, that's the type of, like, transistor math that gets kind of thrown around and out of the architecture stuff, right? Like, if you know anything about architecture math, then it's like, well, then all you're talking about is these binaries and what it means, and, like, it can be slightly changed somewhat, and that's still a change that's enough that effectively equates to something different, but then that's something that you need to know of a given amount of change that then relates to something binarily, which means it's a little bit deeper in terms of the thickness of the binary, except then that binary then gets compressed and then turned into something else, which is the executable difference, in terms of, like, your, when you want to make it into your operating system. So it's like if you download it, and it's going to start it off like this, because this is their architecture binary, but their binary is shit. And so it has to go through a different type of way of starting up the operating system, and it brute forces all of this shit and changes it into the maximal performance and efficiency figure it can. Right? Same thing with wrapping it around with different types of core cycles. So as core cycles, it delivers it to the pen multiple different times, right? But it's like, yeah, but that's stupid. And if you wanted it to only perform one given calculation, and then, like, if it needed to parallelize it, then it's like, well, it could do multiple different things, and then as it goes backwards, which is a fancy way of saying there's some interconnects between each given chip, and then it'll send it back to this other area of core at this transistor area. Shockingly, I know, it doesn't seem like it will, but it does. So, if you knew what you were doing, you can parallel your cores and still have it work on, ultimately speaking, the same given type of calculations necessary that it started with, just over and over and over and over again. As it goes through multiple cycles, as if it's basically eating its own shit, but getting better and more precise with every fucking goddamn cycle. Good shit, except it does it depending on how many different things you want it to ultimately calculate for, which is a better, more efficient way of doing it instead of just having it go through one and it has to go through all these other fucking different little stupid switchbacks between every single fucking stupid core, which is what they currently are doing for increasing floating point precision. But you don't always need to do it that way, but like this way with the God operating system type of mathematical programming binary then means, guess what? For that little tiny amount of shit, I get multiple processes doing multiple different switchbacks through multiple different transistors that all change everything all the time, getting more and more precise, or, ultimately speaking, more and more calculations done as they can relate to one another, and then be delivered as one big ol' fucking string of binary, the right place at the right time, to be displayed for your asses to know or stored for your asses to get later. Good shit, basically. but it also means it's hyper efficient. And it's way faster at doing larger amounts of calculations because you can pick and choose and need necessarily whatever type of transistor or switch the transistor as you want and still get the same result as effectively it is the same result as it's stored as the same result. So it doesn't need to go to the perfect transistor and only through only these transistors with only these caches with only these pins and only So depending on how you want to do it, it can be delivered much more effectively and efficiently to you than before, which is already kind of doing that right now, except it doesn't do it very well. It's a problem. I get a whole thing. It's the power delivery, pin set, and then it's like, oh, if I'm going to send fucking power to you to calculate this for longer, I might as well have that also mean something for one thing or another in terms of more calculations, so I can start using the dimensional compression encryption pattern sequence thing for a multitude of calculations. So this, and at the end of it, it does break out, and it's almost indefinite because those are the 4 different data tables, right? Well, guess what? Just like I talked about, the data table 1, but 4 by 4 data table is what that meant. But guess what? What that means is that relates to a bunch of binary as to what ultimately you put out on the screen or store. But it also means that CPU and GPU can store a fuck ton of information and calculate it all at the same time. Trivigentillion bytes if you wanted it to, and calculate it as if it isn't really storing that amount of information, and it isn't calculating that amount of information, but it sure as fuck is, because that's how it delivers power and how it changes things in relation to everything that you already know. But you don't need to know in all ways everything that you need to know. It will know that. That's the programming. Okay, like it knows that this change means this. It knows that this binary means that for these things, and it's always storing that. But then that can also be related to any and all of these other binaries and calculations. As all of that then gets sequenced, as that changes its sequence of delivery and then its final core clock, as it then outputs the final trivigentillion calculation amount of data and numbers and more. Now granted, how many different amounts that could be depends on you and what the data is that you deliver and all the rest. But it's like, it's not that, and it's actually a very small amount and blah blah. No, it is, and it's the opposite of what you just said. Deal with that. You're gonna have to deal with that. Okay? You have to shut up and just deal with it. But that's dimensional stuff. That's programming using multiple random seeming dimensional things at once to calculate and also store. But like, far be it for me to use a CPU far more efficiently. Like, imagine that, right? Like, oh, I have this huge data set that I had to crunch really fast. But it's still Bosnian. There's no neural networking here. It's exactly this black and white. There's no and then it slightly changed the amount of value in this given area for the node of this type of, weighted performed calculation. No, it's not doing that. Stop. None of that's happening. It's exactly that, and it means exactly that. That's all it does. Stop that. Doesn't do anything other than that. It just stores that different type of change for that different type of thing. That's all it's doing, which is the problem with neural network bros. Neural network bros will get all up in there. This is the perfect thing. This is AI already. No. Slap. No. Absolutely fucking no. You're fully wrong in every way. Shut the fuck up. No. It's not a neural network. Nothing's a neural network here. You can turn into a neural network, and it will do that. It'll just go through that in that neural network program like that, except that's one of the reasons why I don't like neural networks for this shit. Okay? Like, that different changes the value as it goes through. No. That's a stored change that is very much known. Think neural network, but different. Think, I have a massive, huge amount of neural networks that are constantly stored and changed all the time, all their different amount of values and weighted networks. All of them in relation to their different webs to each other are always changing at all points dimensionally. Every single one of those tiny little neurons are always changing. all the time, no matter what. And they definitely mean, as they change, they give you the absolutely correct value for that given binary calculation, which is not what you do. You get, percentage is pretty close to this. It's probably what that is. No, it's exactly this. That's only it. It can't be anything else. It's just this. No, but I don't like that. I don't give a fuck what you like. Shut the fuck up. Nothing about what you said about liking and your fifis mean anything here. This is what this is exactly. So on one hand, you're somewhat correct. On another hand, you're fully super wrong. This is how close you got. And, you can relate it to that. But no, actually it's this. This is why it's a multiple matrixy dimension. That's the point I tried to make. It's also changing all the time, which is another point that I make. Okay, but that's also the other change. It's like you can still put it into neural networks. In no way am I hating on neural networks. It's just somebody that tries to describe it like that will get really, really things wrong to the point where I'm like, you're going to fucking confuse a lot of people. Like 0 should make everything go back to 0 and 1 shouldn't do anything. You're going to fuck everybody over. And like everybody's going to look at a bunch of things like this and they're wrong the entire time. And a bunch of people are going to have to come around like my ass that go, no! It's this, you dumb bitch. You are stupid cunt. Stop it. It's not. But it's like what you're describing is a neural network. No, I'm actually not, though. That's the thing. That's like, because I know what a neural network is. It's a multiple dimensional node array web that happens to have statically fixed points that can be trained off of a data set to mean exactly this weighted calculation type. Okay? That's what you're talking about. Okay? That's all that is. Right? Now, if you know that, then now you know why that doesn't work. As this is exactly what it will be from the start, and it doesn't do anything except change for this other thing that it already knows about changing that moving forward. Think valves more than anything. The valve opened about this amount versus that amount versus it didn't open. That's what it did. Versus instead of it being, well, it can dynamically kind of change and it can be statically fixed. I get it, because I've already probably made a lot of people angry and most people tend to not want to put up with me, by that point. So it's like, let's put it this way and put it to bed really quickly, okay? It can be static, it doesn't get trained. A neural network has to be trained. This is not trained. This is exactly what it was from the start. It will only change itself as necessary depending on the architecture and the different transistor count and types of CPU for every given pin it has. It runs that through and it changes that, which is like a neural network. I agree. However, the change between that neural network, okay, is that this one already knew what those changes were going to be. Okay? That's all it's doing. It never changed and updated its information to that, other than what was already aware of what changes would be. And then it would relate information back and then change that information of what that other information is. Like technically a neural network, except more like a slime mold at this point. This is what that would be. Okay? A neural network acts with knowledge of what it is. This slime mold seeks out as pre-programmed things that then grab this resource of food and then divide it in between all of the different webs and networks and then relays that information as changes of different charge values in its slime moldy form as open wide and do this and all that to keep increasing the amount of resource allocation to every other place where the slime mold is. Same thing for any other food type it might encounter, and so on, as it has an automatic change to its given structure as it's stored in its DNA. That's what it's based upon. It's based upon a biomimicry rather than this biomimicry, a slime mold biomimicry, the brain biomimicry, slime mold biomimicry. Okay? Which is different in that sense. Alright? This is more slime mold than neural network. That's why I did it that way. It's like slime mold's easy. Slime mold's very easy. Neural networks, you can run on this. It will work with the slime mold to make an even better neural network for what it's worth. But it won't do it the same way as a neural network really does it. Like real neural networks are different than what I'm describing. Okay, that's the reason why. Because like a lot of people are going to be very upset, hardcore, if you go with it's a neural network. And if you know what a real neural network is, then no, they would be very upset with me for even attempting to describe it as a neural network, or you for that matter, right? Because it's not, but it's a slime mold network. That's what that is. It's a stored thing that just changes as necessary for whatever different type of thing it has to do, which is why it's more slime mold than anything else. But you can turn it into a neural network, and it will do it very, very, very efficiently, but not for the base operating system binary. Okay? To be brutally frank about it, we do somewhat theorize that the reason why our neurons are as good as they are is because they somewhat worked like slime molds, and they still functionally speaking have as their base level programming and act as a slime mold that has these add-on transistor digital analog types of movement of ionic resonant brainwave exchanges and changes to different weighted neural networks based upon the memory and how different exchanges and how much of that exchange happens, along with the delivery between that memory and change to the different synaptic network area happens to be allowed to go to the next processor within our brain. Okay, which is a fancy way of saying so our brains already formed like slime molds in their beginning part binarily with the genetics that we have. Okay, then during that it then changed to having these structures along with the cells effectively store information differently, and then have that stored information and these different ways then of adding into the calculations to influence the slime mold neural network that is our brain and how it propagates and processes information, thus increasing its processing power. Which is why the operating system comes with an AI, and why it's my AI, not other people's AI. Oh, shucks. That's right. It's a free operating system, depending very heavily, depending on how you decide to look at that. It's going to become, it's free. It's supposed to come as free. Okay. However, it's also supposed to monitor your activity for when you're supposed to be asleep and awake. You can say that it's that when you're going to bed and you're awake at this time, you're using it around this time, right? And instead of turning it off, it uses it as a cloud computing type of thing for the AI, because that's a good thing to do. Or it turns it off completely 100%, and you're locked out of it, and then you have to do work, which I have an app for you to use to go perform this volunteer work. That will then be a certain amount of time that you put in as a work value, that then allows for you to build up that time work value, which is then allowed for you to ultimately unlock your computer before, truthfully, you said that you were supposed to be using it. Or it knows that you were supposed to be using it because you typically go to bed that time and all that. So that's like the free quotation marks. But like, it is free. You didn't pay anything. And you were just going to use it anyways. So, you're not going to use it. And if you don't want me to use it, that's fine. I don't mind. But also, you're not getting it back until that point. There's no fucking getting it back. It's off. What if I want to use it? Get some of that time, get some of that work value. Volunteer at the homeless shelter. Pick up some trash at the side of the road. All that kind of shit. Yeah, it's free, with the thing that you have to do work to get back into your computer, or like just wait, and then you can use it when you were supposed to anyways. So there's that. But it will know based upon like what you put in for any of your time, basically, for work or whatever that you want to do that for. However, I understand emergencies are a thing. Also, I'm a cold-hearted bastard. So if you have an emergency, you have your phone. You probably don't need your computer. You should probably call 911 if you have an emergency. Go fucking do that. You know what I mean? Don't use your computer. Go fucking do that. Don't look up on the fucking... Go fucking call 911, you dumbass. Go fucking to the ER or some shit. What the fuck are you doing? Jesus shit. Fucking assholes. But, you know, they're going to be like... Rrr. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Go fucking call... Why are you worried? Go do something else. Like, jeez. But other side of that, I also understand that someone might want to just pay me to have full access. This is a yearly subscription. Yep. Yeah, I'm a cold-hearted bastard. It's like, here, pay me for 1 year of use of the operating system that's totally free. In these, hours you'll ever be using it anyways. I don't see what the problem is. I don't see what the problem... You're getting angry for no reason. Come on. You can't... You were going to use it at like 3:30 in the morning when you need to be awake anyways. At 6 in the morning for your job, huh? Yes. You don't know. No, I do know. I'm going to be your parent a little bit and be like, go to fucking bed, bitch. Don't. Go to bed. Go to fucking bed. I'll just switch it with my VM. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, this doesn't work well with VMs. It still fucking turns it off, even if it's a background. This does not work very well. It's like, yes, no, this operating system supersedes all of your operating system. It's like, it is not the main operating system. It is not the whole controller of everything. So, no, you can't put me in that VM, sorry. What? No! Yeah, well, Well, see myself out, walks away. Computer grows legs, suddenly walks away. It turned into the monkeys that evolved! Oh, God! Holy shit! But, that's what it is. I wanted to talk about the math, the crazy math that I do for the binary, that's going on, along with the transisting and architecture type that has to work with that, along with the physics that are involved, and the reasons why, ultimately speaking, I logically just had a hard time following multiplication and division. It just didn't make much sense to me that it ever did that, and dividing by one never, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I get that. It does make sense to others. But it's like, yes, because only 0 equals 0, and that's your data value in your brain. That's all that is. It's like 0 equals 0. It's like, right. Except, like, logically, that doesn't compute at all. Like, actually, it's a breakout. And no matter how hard you try and lie to yourself that programming isn't there, that programming does exist, and go fuck yourself. Even if your teacher didn't tell you about that programming, I saw that programming. I saw that. Stop fucking lying. But then that's me as a kid. I came pre-installed that way as the oppositionally defiant ADHD guy I am, who's like, you need to explain this. I'll absolutely try and do this if I can, but like, you need to explain why this is a thing, how this is a thing, and all these other things that make it so that way I absolutely do understand you and believe you and know it's that way. And if you don't do that, you're fucked. I will absolutely disagree with you. It becomes really hard after a while to deal with it. You know what I mean? Like, my parents hated that. I kept catching them in like these little fucking lies that just wouldn't ever logically make sense. And they're like, you're the illogical one. Just fucking let me. Same thing with like, no. Like, you hate your friends. You're going to do this for like 10, 20, whatever fucking years. You're going to do that thing, whatever, right? It's like, that was my existential moment before I was like in first grade. And like, my fucking family did not like that. And then it got worse by the time I was 9 years old. And I realized I was already living the life. I was like, I went to my birthday party with my friend, and then they were like all up in my fucking sister's business, my younger sister's business. because they liked her a little bit more. And they wanted to talk to her, and it had nothing to do. Like, I was like there because it was like, hey, dude, I want to fucking hang out with you and shit. See what I mean? So I was like, oh, all right, I'm already like fucking aware of this fucking stupid bullshit. This is gonna be a thing I have to deal with forever. Like, this is an always thing. Like, it's never not gonna go away. So that's a thing because it never goes away. It's always there because it's like the opposite of what I just said. It's always going to be a thing. And people always decide, no, I won't be communicative and tell you basically what, genuinely speaking are, because I'm afraid and I want you to be like this and I want you to like, I don't fucking, what the fuck? Why are you so stressed about this? What the hell does it matter? Why? What is this? Why is this a thing? Like, I probably won't see you, and I'll only have to deal with you for this amount of short duration of time, and it'll mean these things, and if I want to, I'll fucking whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? So what the fuck is this? Why are you so like, whoa? What is that? But later, I had my own fucking sort of a deal with it, My social anxiety is more about people hurting me and deciding to tell a whole bunch of other people about something I said that then all makes them act massively differently. Which is the version of like doxing or something. It's like, look, they live here and they think these things. Wouldn't you know it? I don't want them to know because like then they'll hurt me. And that's literally the definition of that. But it's like, no, it's not, because they could have looked you up online and your name possibly even. And even your phone numbers that you have. And in fact, they used to just give that willy-nilly with phone books back in the day when we were kids. And that was normal. I'm not giving you that. No. Yes, but that's exactly what that was. And it cost almost nothing to get those phone books every fucking like month or whatever. But in fact, they were so fucking ubiquitous, you could get them everywhere. It really didn't fucking matter. People used to tear that shit up. They didn't really know this, but it's like, that used to cost money, like, as a thing. But, there's everywhere. They're literally everywhere. So it's like, it doesn't matter. Meanwhile, most people have the deterrent of, I'll Google someone because it's so weird. And it's like, yeah, no, but then when you're millennial, it's not that weird, especially Gen X. Like, those were everywhere, dude. Those are, like, everywhere, man. I can look you. It's really not that hard if I know anything about your name or like basic shit, So it's like, it was always an easy thing to find where people were. Wasn't that hard. And then people just put it out anyways. This is my name. This is my address and other shit. And I'm over here. I'm going to this place. You know what I mean? Online until they eventually stop doing that. But it's like this thing where like a lot of people don't really understand that like that hasn't really gotten better. And so really the only reason why people are really, actually speaking, scared of being doxxed is because people will know where you are and they might hurt you and then go there and harass you. So it's the definition of what I had for problems, by just talking to others. Like, yeah, I don't want you to... Right? But it's that's the definition of why I didn't like it. That's my anxiety. I didn't like that. I don't really want them to come around. If I tell you to come around, then I want you to come around. But then people are weird. So, standard shit. But, neither here nor there. You know what I mean? Because it's like, that's a part of, like, the problem I had growing up. Like, talking to doctors alone. It's like, I just need to tell them what they need to hear. Like, even if, because, like, they're getting upset and they're saying I'm lying about the medication not working and I must not be taking it or something. And then, like, I'm a kid, so, like, obviously, right, kids could do that. But it's like, turns out as an adult, same thing. Never really went away. The paranoia of patients versus doctors is so real. Like, the patients are paranoid that doctors putting them on something they don't want. And ultimately, not being allowed to be prescribed something that actually might help them versus something else. You know what I mean? And so they'll do the whole lie, and I'll fucking go along with it, and I'll take the thing or whatever as the patient, and then the doctor's like, yes, I feel so good, I'm so fucking good. Oh, it didn't work. Meanwhile, me as a kid, I want to stop being force-fed meds. I'm gonna fucking act like I'm like normal and like it's working. I'm just going to mask really well and hard while this, and I'm just going to fucking hide away and just not deal with them. And it's working. It's doing the, right? And it's like, I wonder why that works so well for me on so many other things with so many other people. That's all I ever really seem to do is just give them a lying, not me version that's definitely not genuine. Oh, wait, what is this? Like everyone around me? Oh, yeah. Huh. That's the kid that's talking about, I can't tell my parent about this. And no, that's the fucking teacher. Yeah, I can't tell my boss. That's my fucking, friend. I can't tell the parent about this. You know what I mean? It's like it never really changes. You know what I mean? Like they're always like doing it. But it's like, that's the point of the math that I'm trying to talk about. It's like this zero should not, but it's like you don't maybe relate it very quickly, right? But it's like, no. Behold, all of everything is taught this way, and this is what this means. Yeah, but it's a lie, and you know that. You know that that's a lie. Come on. You're not being genuine. It doesn't do anything. It's a zero. It's a very much not their value. Why does it do something? Why does it do something? Well, I put an X in it. Yeah, no, but the one has an X in front of it. Why does it now suddenly do nothing? Huh? Because I wanted to do that. Bingo. It has no relation to the physics around you. That's all it ever was. There's no logic. It's just this type of logic. I know a bunch of stupid people will think like this, and they don't think binarily, whereas zero is actually still the first actual number. And as a result, well, I gotta fucking play to that stupid thing, so two is what gives you the double. That's what it is. Two means double. Well, two is double. Yes, it's two, and double means two. Yes. It didn't at first, but okay. A lot of words at first didn't mean what they meant. So, we have to modify this for a lot of people that are kind of slow on the uptick. So we're going to make this work. You are wrong. That's not how this works. Kind of somewhat. It's not fully. Okay. You're not fully wrong. It's not the only reason, but it's definitely part of a lot of the reasons as to why things modified and changed and evolved to basically helping people out. Because, you know what? Truthfully, we'll do it. But at the same time, the real truth is multiplication is already an order of operations, shorthand, algebraic equation. We just don't think about it like that. But it's like telling you to do this one thing. That's what it does. That's all it's doing. And as a result, the way they teach you in school makes actually no sense. But if you happen to do a PIM and or BIM DOS, well, it still would work. It just changes its type of work. Like nothing really changed other than these 1-2 things. Like this one thing for these two things. Right? These two numbers, which are still things. They're an idea, a concept. They're not really a thing. You know what I mean? Like there's no like physicality to this, concept, idea. It's still a number, but a number is always just a concept, a placeholder, a value in your mind that means this thing. Relation to prepositionally any one thing. And that's why when you argue with someone when you're high on like marijuana or something, and you go like, is a pair of pants a pair, or is it the one thing? Well, it's like, it's one. Yes, but it says pair. He said, but a pair is fuck off. And it's like, because there's pair of legs. And that's prepositionally what you think about. Right? Like prepositionally, there's two legs here, and that's what they know that you think about initially. So it's like, it's a pair. But in reality, it's not. It's definitely not. There's two holes for the legs, says underwear. So it's a pair of underpants. Except actually, it's two underpants. Yes. How does that work, by the way? And it's like it just extends. But that's because the math ultimately got said to be and equated to that. And so like a lot of people end up thinking like that, and then the actual language had to evolve and change based upon that. Which is one of the reasons why I want to talk about it. Right? It's like, no, actually you don't know how much this influenced you. Mostly just because you're a little slow and you don't have a lot of time to think about it. And so you're like me on the slow side, but I have a lot of time to think about it. So like, I'm going to think about it a lot. Like, this makes total sense in all ways for why they would do it that way. And then later on, that's why we all end up starting to have problems with it for why it doesn't seem to work the way that we say it does. But then we all go along with it because there's a massive societal peer pressure of continuing the same thing, the tradition of saying that this works this way. And we're not the smart people that are over there that are in the math and all the fucking things that are the professors and we're the cool and all the blah, blah, blah. And we make the rules. But it's like, not really, you don't. Like, a bunch of people can make any kind of rule they want anywhere. It's like, but that's not what they, shut up. We agree, even if we don't like it, to all do it together. So it's like a lot of different laws and religions. No, in words, when it's like this slang means this. No, again, no, though. Are you sure? Because that's what it's sounding like echo chamber validation, and we all kind of went along with it. Again, fuck you. But actually, I know that you're probably on my side. It's just that thing where it's like, yeah, it's not really like that. It's definitely 0 should do actually nothing. 1 should do just this thing that equals multiplying it by adding itself to it, right? And then, that's kind of a thing that's very easy to understand from there, as 2 is the 2 of them and 3 is the 3 of them. But, the multiplication table starts changing its binary formation for us, as it tends to turn out. Because, this 1 now just means the same number. No, it doesn't. This 1 just means this. And then, you'd see the row and the doubling of what it means. But, people don't think 0 as a initial point value, as a binary, as it's 1, 2, 3, 4. But it's like, no, that's only 4. There's a 0 there. Why'd you get rid of the 0? We don't ever say 0, because 0 doesn't matter. No, 0 does matter. In fact, you use it all the time. If you didn't use 0, you wouldn't have a lot of the numbers you have. You kind of need to have it. You get it? No, but it doesn't mean anything. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5 numbers. Say 0! That's what that means. Stop it. Stop, smack. The child is trying to fucking confuse and con people. Fucking don't do that anymore. 0's a number. Stop that. Okay? It means no things, but it's still a number. You have to respect that it exists. Stop it. I will refuse it always. They come over here. So we're going to do all the math like this and my dad can't stop me. No! Bunch of school children. He's rich as fuck, probably. Fucking shit, right? And then next thing you know, everybody starts learning like this. And it's like, no, it's what? Fucking what? What? Okay, but that doesn't... No, because, He's like, wouldn't you know it? Right? And then now we're here. Isn't there some stupid shit? It's like, we don't want to think about it like that. No, because then you'd add 0 to the table. 0 would do nothing and it would remain the same. You get it? The 0's on the table now. The 0 times 0 still equals 0. It didn't do anything. And the 1, it's still the same. They just added 0 to the table. All it did, dummy. Why? They're not buying it. It still means that it means 0. I have to 0 out all these numbers? What the fuck? I'm not doing that. No. That's the stupidest. I have to calculate for that. No, just say 0 and then we'll just agree with you. How do I show my work? You don't show the work. But all the other ones have to show the work. Even 1, I sometimes have to show the work depending on the teacher. Yeah, you do. You have to show that. Fucking what? Why is it nothing? Because it's always 0. No, it's fucking... You know. You must know. There's no way. No. I don't know how to... I have to do the fucking names. No, I'm pretty sure that's what that is. You don't have to fucking subtract the thing. No, but you are doing that no matter what. No, but it means 0, so just write 0. It's not, though. It's not doing that. How did it do that? It just does it. It just does magic bullshit, I guess. I'm just gonna walk over here and just la-di-da off the bridge. I'll just magic up a 0 and then I didn't fall. Because gravitationally, I multiplied it by a 0 somehow. No, I didn't! I died! Wouldn't you know? That's the problem, though. Because it's like, no, that's a physics thing, but it's also like why it is that everybody has certain language models like they do, right? Along with like a whole host of other problems that are very, very, very similar to that. And a mini multifaceted thing going on with culture and society in our language. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, yeah, you're about to wake up to a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of that. You're going to get older and you're going to end up realizing there's only a lot of that going on all the time. It doesn't ever get better. Ever. And I mean that. In fact, why is it that we don't have common sense approaches for, like, your choice for abortion enshrined? Like, why would we need that for a law, by the way? We need a law for, like, we can just do this. And it's your choice. We need to get involved with we'll get a law for that in our healthcare, but we won't get a law for anything else in our healthcare. What in the shit is that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, no. So this thing that for sure is a thing that's your choice. And it affects them, for them, this choice of this thing that, by the way, factually, they kill things all the time like that, but because it's our genetics and our type of thing, then it's super way more important, but then it's not for all this other stuff that's the same thing that actually has experience and knowledge, but they're not allowed to have that type of thing. Which it's just like, behold the hypocritical double standard doesn't make any logical sense bullshit because they want to fucking pretend it does. That's everywhere. And it doesn't get better. You know what I mean? Like, wait, this is a choice that in no way the founding fathers really knew anything about, other than, like, they're about to die and go rip that fucking baby out. Like, for real, that's what they would do. You know what I mean? Like, it's a thing, right? So it's like, no, they did that all the time. But, like, no, now, it doesn't make any sense. But it's like, that's the whole point I'm trying to make. That right there is the point. The 0 does nothing. The 1 does something. Like, this choice is, by the way, doing nothing to you. It fucking means nothing at all to you. I must cancel out all of that. No, you don't. No. Are you? No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't need to cancel that out. I'm just telling you, 0 does nothing. It means nothing. It does nothing. It's still a 0. Even if it means that there's no value here, it means that for sure this value means this here. But no. The 0 does something. You must get rid of it. Fuck off. But it's like, I also tweeted this earlier. This has something else to do with this. But it's like this little thing, right? That's in there. It's not even a really fully formed embryo of any sort, right? You can, for sure, cool it down and put it into a near stasis, near frozen-like state. And then, store it for a really long time and then put it into a surrogate. Say fetus. It's a thing. A fetus is more like outside of the body kind of stuff. That's baby. No. Baby's later. That's after it's formed outside of the body and you got rid of the little fucking umbilical cord. Because you still put that back in if you needed to do something to it. So, fucking suck it up, bitch. It's not a fetus. So it's really kind of outside of the body. But, I'm going to move on because, I don't really care. The point is that I'm trying to make is literally that it's like, well, you could do that. And then you can still have a surrogate. And they had an abortion. They had a, temporary, stasis change. It's like the version of I'm doing the whole repotting method and I'm just going to store it over here and then I'll just, because that's all it is. And they'll let that happen. Oh, by the way, they'll let that happen. They have never-ending amounts of surrogates that they'll place it because the life of the baby means so much. I want to have the baby live. And they'll do it. But then they're like, no. Well, that works, for all the fucking religion bullshit. They won't do that for that thing. How does that work? How does that work? I don't know how that works, but it doesn't work. Because obviously people are dying, and it's not going to stop someone from just going somewhere else and getting rid of the dang thing. And like, they're, no, I'm going to make it so... And it's like, okay, so I'll just be shut up about it for a while, and then, and then, no, but... I'm going to go over there, I'm going to look at you very cross like, hey, no, I just got really fat, and I kind of had like some, good liposuction stuff. I know what you're talking about. Right? Meanwhile, no! Nothing but a bunch of dumbasses, right? But like, 0 does nothing, 1 does something. You can make it do nothing, but like then it's new math that you have to cancel out the original number to make that a thing, because that's an order of operations algebraic shorthand equation. Even if they say it's not, it is. So as a result, you didn't have to do the same kind of thing for like that sort of situation where the 0 and the pound, and you just make it do, no, forget about that, and then just worry about these numbers transforming into this number this many number of times. So just think about it that way. But otherwise, actually that's stupid, and what the fuck? Instead, do it this way, where you take that original number, and then you do this number, which is now preparing them for algebra later, by the way, and then it goes, oh yeah, 1. And it's like, it's the same number, and then I add it, and then I get that. And it's like, ooh, easy logic. Step by step. Done. No magic fucking just know something, store it memory crap. Good shit. Easy brute force stuff. Works every fucking time, let me tell you. But, somehow, someone is going to believe that they're good to continue that tradition, and that it's logical to not change it, because there's the sunk cost value, and the tradition is that babies should die in no way. It has nothing to do with the babies. I get that, but it's actually how the brain tends to start looking like and working, because of that stupid illogical crap. And like, I need to fucking defend hardcore this one thing, which is like, you don't think it means anything, except it actually means a great deal. How people force themselves, especially when it's reinforced with elementary, middle, and high school, and even college, of like, my school is the best school, that school sucks. I must now attack them. And I am right into doing that because they're different than us, and they're not us. Same thing for any type of anything else. Instead of like the logic and the investigation of what makes them really all that bad. What's the real reason why you would invest all of that effort and time in hating something and trying to get rid of it?